word I hate, more effectively than to teach them how to be deeply literate and historically knowledgeable. If you're looking to facilitate people's ability to make positive changes in their own life, there is nothing you can do that's more helpful to that than to make them literate. And if you want to help them understand who they are in the deepest sense, over and above the superficial attractions of tribalism, let's say, you have to educate them deeply in this historical realm that requires the acquisition of explicit knowledge about the central nature of the human being. And that would be the distinguished citizen, let's say, someone capable of upholding the responsibilities of a citizen and someone worthy of the rights that are part and parcel of that. And without a deep humanities education, all of that disappears because it has to be transmitted explicitly. And so that was the proper role of the universities for years.
It was. As I envision it, our role was twofold. That we were going to teach a method, the inductive method, as opposed to the deductive method, so that people, when they looked at the human experience via art or literature or history, they would look at exempla and then they would come to a general overriding conclusion that took the evidence, rather than say, I have an idea and I'm going to cherry pick the evidence. That was one thing that we taught, the Socratic inductive method. The other was we had to give them some kind of arsenal or realm of knowledge or referent point. So I know I used to Xerox maybe 500 terms, ionic order or non-compos mentis, anything I could give as an architecture. And then everybody made fun of multiply. We had mostly essay tests, but I always thought there was a value in a multi-choice test. And key dates, generals, I would always say to the student, when you leave leave here, I want you to know how far Sparta is from Athens. I want you to give me 3 reasons quickly why the Mycenaean Empire collapsed. And it was funny because some of our students would sit in on interviews from Ivy League professors, and they would ask these questions. And these professors, I should say ABDs, didn't have any answers for them. They had no practical knowledge. And then one student said to me, well, why are we doing this? And I said, well, it's so that you don't have to repeat every life experience that you have. You're going to learn what is wise and stupid by experience, and often that experience is going to be deleterious to your character or your fortune, but you don't have to
fatal.
Yeah, you don't have to do that all the time. If you think that sometimes people who are right are punished, or the more moral a person is, the more that he's hated, it's not you alone that experiences that. You can find comfort in Antigone. Or if you can say the race goes not to the swift, and why I had a student came in and he said, you know what, I'm the best tackle on the team, but I never get a chance to play because I don't kiss up. And I said, then you're old Ajax, and what are you going to do about it? But that's the dilemma of Ajax and the Sophoclean play. Right. So that was some of the things in a more pragmatic sense the humanities were able to do. They were able to give a person a whole reference of knowledge so that they didn't have to live out and learn something by rote or they had an example. And the other thing is it gave them a sense of beauty and style.
That's not optional. That's not optional for human beings. I mean, we are linguistic creatures and we require an awful lot of cultural programming.
I think we do.
And every culture knows that. And so we're definitely in the situation where if we don't inculcate the wisdom of the past into our young people, then they are forced to regenerate that wisdom through painful and often fatal experience. Those are the options. And to study history and the humanities is to arm yourself against the sea of troubles and to become literate. And that is the core of the universities, and the universities have definitely abandoned that in the favor of this idiot narrative. You know, here's something you might find interesting. So I did a research study with one of my students just before I was basically, kicked out of the university for being persona non gratis. And we investigated 2 mysteries. The first was there a coherent set of beliefs that you could describe as politically correct? And the way we investigated that was to produce a very large body of political statements, and then to find out the degree to which people agreed with them, and then to analyze them statistically to see if there were patterns of belief. And we found 2 patterns of belief that were obviously commensurate with the notion of a politically correct set of beliefs. And one of them was like a politically correct liberalism, and the other was politically correct authoritarianism. And there's been quite a bit of research on the psychological front with regards to politically correct authoritarianism in recent years. So first of all, there is such a thing as politically correct beliefs, and there's an authoritarian version. But then you might also ask yourself, what predicts whether or not people will believe these theories? You know what the biggest predictor was? This is so horrible. It was low verbal intelligence. It was a bigger predictor than verbal intelligence is a predictor of grades or socioeconomic outcome. It was 0.45, a correlation whose magnitude you never get in a social science study, a walloping effect. And then the subsidiary predictors were, being female was one of them, being agreeable in temperament, which is a feminine personality temperament, and then having taken any courses that were essentially propagandistic in nature. And so part of the reason that people fall for this simplistic set of ideas is because, well, they are simple, and they're very attractive to people who want or require a unidimensional view of the world in light of both of its simplicity, let's say, but also its underlying proclivity also to identify a convenient enemy.
I think that's true. I had a student, I mentioned it in The Dying Citizen, but I had a student who once said to me, well, you know, this country is very unfair because Wyoming has one senator, I think at the time it was for 400,000 residents. And California at that time, we were 30 million, now it's 41. But we have to have 15 million people, we only get one senator. And I said, now why would that be? And he said, because the founders were not democratic. I said, yes, but why weren't they fully democratic? And do you have, the House was going to be elected the whole House flips every 2 years. It represents 750,000 people. So it is democratic, but it's balanced by the Senate that flips every 3 years. I mean, 1/3 only flips every 2 years. You have to be older. It represents states. It's America as defined by the individual 50 states, not the people. That's the House. And this then is balanced by the executive. And the person was so arrogant because he was so ignorant, but he had got this catchphrase in his mind that America's a democracy and therefore the Senate's not democratic. And then, so I was very interested in this. And so I went in, when I was doing I didn't realize there was a whole body of scholarly literature attacking the Senate from law schools and from political